my personal aims were to be able to soften the voice, but still be able to give it an element of volume. Personally, I'm aiming for a gender-neutral voice, in the large part because that's what I feel is achievable, but also doesn't lose too much of what's been familiar to me for such a long time. Initially, perhaps, that was that perception I had in my mind, but I think that was set by conditions of being able to pass as a female person rather than a male person, when, in all honesty, I was quite comfortable with my own voice, as were and are other people, and to a larger part it was the greater, wider society that was actually putting that social construct on me to reach something I just didn't feel was achievable. Yes, many people have said that they're quite comfortable with my voice. It does cause some issues on the telephone sometimes, but I address that with my own techniques by asking to be addressed by my first name and not being referred to as a particular gender, which definitely helps. Yes, some of the techniques can be time-consuming, and depending on where you're trying to get your voice to go, the challenge can be too great. So for me, some small steps are better than large strides. A few months, yeah, at least, and it will be an ongoing process. As I transition more as a female person, while retaining my identity as being non-binary from a gender, that's indeterminate yet as to what range I'll actually feel I need to go to for myself. And ultimately that has to be our main goal, is our own aims and not what society's saying we have to adhere to.
Prior to starting testosterone, I had quite a higher voice, and this was something that affected my confidence, it affected how I interacted with people, and it made me sort of not want to talk sometimes. So that was really useful for me to do some voice coaching stuff before I started testosterone. After starting testosterone, my voice dropped very quickly, and suddenly I had a brand new voice and I didn't know what to do with it. And it was a voice that I wasn't used to talking at length with. So it was more of a case of strengthening that voice and being able to use that voice without damaging it, after so many years of trying to force my voice down a bit. So it was relearning my voice and figuring out what kind of things I needed to continue talking like I am now at length, safely, and being able to, enunciate that. I think it's more about confidence in presenting in a way that you're more comfortable with. So I don't necessarily force my voice down anymore, and sometimes my voice, despite being on testosterone, does naturally go up, and that's just how I'm happy to present. You'll find a lot of cis men who kind of present very flat. They communicate in that way. That's not me. How I want to present is more sort of emotional and more able to express my emotions through, like I'm doing now with body language and my voice going up and down, sort of thing. That's how I feel confident, and that's not necessarily something that would be taught to me if I was going forward as sort of, this is how men are supposed to be perceived in society. So I'd just be boxing myself if that was how I was wanting to present. Presenting more authentically is more comfortable for me, and comfortable for me navigating society as well.
Yeah, that's not the case for a lot of people, but it kind of is the case for me. I'm quite definitely a trans woman. However I choose to express that and dress and so forth is kind of secondary to your own identity and sense of who you are in yourself. So, you can be gender non-conforming, whoever you are, but I'm a trans woman. I've sought treatment on the NHS, which is ongoing, and yes, it's been an interesting journey. But one of the things that has come up quite frequently is, you know, I do have quite a deep voice, and I'm kind of okay with this. I'm one of the few women you'll meet who can do a pretty good Richard Burton impression. You know, so there is that, but when I'm out and about in society and sort of in the real world, it's a lot different from speaking to somebody over the phone. And that's where a lot of my kind of being misgendered and kind of problems around my voice actually stem from. People make assumptions, don't they? People make a lot of assumptions, and people have the assumption that, well, if you're speaking to somebody who has a deep voice, they're a man. And if you're speaking to someone with a more high-pitched voice, chances are they'll be a woman. But that completely doesn't work. Having worked in a call centre, I've spoken to all sorts of different people who have got a voice unlike the one that you might expect. But, you know, just at those quick phone calls, and particularly at work and so on, or when you have to phone a shop or a doctor's, whatever, and people just, yeah, oh, just hold on, mate, or yeah, can I just stop you there, sir, or whatever. Just all that casual little stuff that people don't necessarily realise they're doing, and they're certainly not doing out of ignorance, and they're not doing it deliberately. How can they? They don't know what I look like. So anything I can do to kind of stop that from happening, and that little chip away at how that makes me feel, then I'm all for it. It's a bit of both, though, actually, now you mention it, because, you know, there's the being misgendered on the phone, and that's me making the effort for other people, but then that's just to make my life easier so I can deal with it. But it is also about, once you've got that ability to do that and you know, have that pitch and express yourself, then that might lead to a great level of confidence in a number of other areas, because you're not constantly worried about how you're coming off to other people because of your voice, because of perhaps the incongruity between the splendid ball gown and the hello, how are you doing? You have to do the things that you feel that you need to do, and don't let other people say, oh, well, no, you must go for vocal therapy and you have to do this. Honestly, when I did actually have a bit of vocal therapy as part of my treatment on the NHS, but I ended up slightly resenting it because I felt I'd been pushed into it in a number of ways. Whereas now I'm approaching it from I want to do this, I have a specific reason to do this, and apart from anything else, I used to sing, I would like to again. So, you know, I do want to work on my voice for a number of reasons, not just related to gender and a transition.